Hey guys, my name's Michael, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Accelerated Executive. In today's episode, I want to talk about how I manage my health while still balancing a high intensity at work. I'll talk about why I think this is important, some of the strategies I've developed, and how you can find the strategies that work for you. So, firstly, when I think about my overall health, I break it down into two buckets with four categories. The first bucket is my mental health, which is a function of my workload and the quality of my relationships. The second bucket is my physical health, which is a function of my exercise and my diet. And early in my career, I recognized that there were many ambitious people that overextended on the first bucket. They worked really, really hard at the cost of the other three categories. And I think that's totally okay if it's a conscious decision. But oftentimes I saw people regretting it, which meant that it wasn't a conscious decision, or they either didn't think about what the extent of the trade offs would be. I know I didn't want that for my life. So over the last 10 years, I've tested a host of different strategies to allow myself to still be a top performer at work while being happy with my relationships and my overall health. And actually, I find that when I do this well, investing in the other three buckets actually isn't a trade off. Investing in the other buckets makes me more effective at work because each unit of time becomes more efficient and productive. So I can go through each of the buckets and share some of my insights and key learnings to see if you can think of your own strategies and test out what works for you. So the first insight for workload is that my career largely defines the volume of work. So my goal here was not necessarily to reduce the amount of work, but to become more efficient with my time so that every unit of input generated a higher output. And the first thing that I learned was that brute force effort eventually plateaus. You can't just keep your foot on the gas at work because if you do, eventually the engine lights are going to turn on. So what I needed to do instead was to figure out what the limits of my mind and my body were so I could better understand when I should accelerate and when I needed to slow down and reflect. Which leads to the second bullet of meditation and journaling. I used to think this was very fluffy and not a good use of my time, but I will be the first to admit that it has drastically improved my performance at work and at home. I journal every day to organize my day and pinpoint what's going well and what should be tweaked. And I do breathing exercises and meditate to actively listen to my mind and body to figure out what I'm doing and what they both need. The third item on this list is time management, and there are an unlimited set of strategies to talk about here, but there are three that I wanted to call out specifically. The first is running more efficient meetings, setting clear objectives, doing pre-work beforehand, keeping the invite small, and ending the meeting once the objective is met are all ways to save your precious time. Calendar management is another one. Removing unnecessary meetings off of your calendar, keeping blocks of time to do deep work, which becomes especially important as you climb in your career, and organizing your meetings in a way to maximize productivity. So if you're going to be on a red-eye flight the night before, you probably don't want to have your most important meeting for the week, first thing the next morning. The last tactic I'll talk about here is learning how to delegate work. And this was hard for me when I initially transitioned from being an individual contributor to a manager. But I realized eventually that this was going to be the only way to maximize my impact because I could only do so much myself. So this skill of being able to delegate is really, really important for learning how to manage your workload and your time. The second bucket I want to talk about are personal relationships. And my primary goal here was to make sure I spent enough time that I was happy with my relationships and the people that I love feel taken care of. So some key insights for me. The first is that I realize that I can't just show up when it's convenient for me. I don't decide when the flowers need watering, so I need to constantly have a pulse on the status of my relationships and communicate early and often, even when I'm busy at work. And this has become significantly easier with the availability of video calls and texting, and so there really aren't any excuses for me. The second thing here is getting things scheduled because once I make the commitment to meet with someone, to catch up with someone, to call them, it makes it a lot harder to remove it. Obviously, there are times where things have to get canceled, but getting it in the calendar really helps me commit, especially when it's a regular thing. The last item here is realizing that no one else will draw your boundaries for you. If you let it, work will consume all of your day and all of your night. So if you want to excel, you're simply going to have to work harder than others. That's a fact. But if you work smart and draw boundaries when you need to, you can still compete with the best while taking care of your mental and your physical health. And actually, I think you'll perform not only well, but probably better than you would have if you didn't invest in the other categories. You'll be able to do it longer because you're happier and you're healthier. The third bucket I'll talk about is physical exercise. So my goal for this bucket is to manage my schedule in such a way that I have enough time for exercise 5 to 6 days a week, including recovery. My first insight here is that working out in the mornings has become the best slot for my energy levels and my schedule. And this wasn't always the case. I used to be a night owl, and I always thought that working out in the morning would make me tired for the day. But I have found and tested that when I plan it right and I get sufficient sleep, morning workouts ground my day. They give me energy, and it's also the only window where I can have complete time to myself because other people are sleeping. The second thing I've learned in the physical category, physical exercise category, is that hard workouts give me confidence. And consistently exercising requires discipline and grit, and that grit translates directly into my work and personal life. As you climb in your career, things will only get more difficult. So having that resiliency and developing that resiliency in whatever physical workouts that you do, I have found would really help my career. The third thing in this bucket is that heavier workouts require more recovery. And this sounds very obvious, but I wanted to call it out because it plays a role with how I manage the first bucket, which is my workload. So I'll usually try to plan heavier lifts or longer runs on weekends or during lighter work weeks because I know I'll be tired the next day. And vice versa. If I have a heavy work week, I'll plan my workouts to be lighter that week and less demanding because I know I'll need the energy and the focus for my work. So they really are interdependent, and learning how to read my body helps me decide what I need for that week. The last thing I'll talk about in the exercise category was something that I learned in university. And when I don't think I have enough time to exercise is usually when I need it the most. So I remember when I was cramming for exams, I felt like I didn't have enough time, and taking a 1 hour break to exercise always led me to more clarity and more focus for studying. So I've taken that and I've extended it into my career and my work as well. When my body and my mind tell me that I don't have enough time to exercise, it's actually usually an indicator that I need to do it right then and there. Even if it's something as simple as walking or a light jog or a light run, getting out to clear my mind has always been a win for me. And then finally, the last category is diet. This one is going to vary for everyone, but ultimately my goal here was to figure out what the combination of foods and eating habits were that would give me the most energy and make me feel good throughout the day. And the first thing I've learned is that my diet needs change as I got older. So when I was younger, the idea of a strict diet didn't seem that important to me because I could eat almost anything and get away with it. But I found that as I got older and busier, my body was much more sensitive to what I ate and when I ate it. So some example changes that I've made, I now drink little to no alcohol, much less sugar than I used to eat, much fewer processed foods. And in terms of habits, for example, for breakfast, I'll either fast or I'll have a banana avocado smoothie with either eggs, oatmeal, yogurt, or nuts. Um, for lunch, I'll almost always have a chicken salad. Sometimes I'll have a protein bowl. And then for dinner, it's some combination of a protein, steak, chicken, salmon, with veggies and a carb, like potatoes and rice. And again, this is very personal for each person and what makes you feel good and what makes you get, what gives you energy. But the point is that I experimented with a lot of different habits and different foods to figure out what worked for me and my energy levels. The last thing in terms of diet, I'll put is sleep, and that could potentially fit in the physical exercise category. But I typically aim for 5 to 7 hours every night. If I get less, because there are obviously going to be nights where you just have to stay at the office and have a lot of hours of work, I'll try to catch up on the weekend. And if I need more rest because I've either had a heavy work week or a workout, then I'll listen to my body and sleep more than those 5 to 7 hours. All right, so I covered the four categories. I realized that was a lot of me talking, but I hope it provided some insight on how you can assess your health at a holistic level. My experience is that when you take care of your mental and your physical health at an integrated level, you become happier, healthier, and you perform better at work. So test different strategies, actively reflect on what's working, what's not, and make adjustments as your life and your career progresses. I hope this was helpful, and in future episodes, I'll dive into some of these topics in a bit more detail. But until then, be kind, work hard, be the change you want to see, and I'll catch you in the next episode.